I want to first start off by saying that we have de-escalated the scene. As I mentioned before, our tactical people are out of the building. Our investigative people have entered the building and they have started their investigation. As we already stated, we have one person, a white male in his late 30s, in custody, and our criminal investigation division investigators are interviewing him now. He entered the building. This was a targeted attack on the Capitol Gazette that is located at 888 Bestgate Road on the first floor. He entered the building with a shotgun and he looked for his victims as he walked through the lower level. We have secured the building. We are in the process of notifying the next of kin. We have 5 confirmed fatals and 2 injuries. The injuries, to my understanding, are superficial, possibly from glass from the shotgun blast. We are working on now securing his residence. He does live in the state of Maryland. We are in the process of securing that residence and preparing for search warrants. So this is the next phase of this scene, and that is the investigative phase. This is the part that takes the most time. As I would assume many of you have already heard from many other police agencies in the state of Maryland and across the country, the investigative process is very difficult. We must be thorough. That's why you will not get the information from social media from us unless it's been confirmed. We have allowed our investigators to do their job. They are there now, and we are going to continue to provide you with information.
Chief,
I want to hold on one second. I want to share something with you that I think is important. We mentioned before about the improvised explosive device. That is not an IED. It was actually canisters of smoke grenades that he used inside of the building when he entered the establishment. So this person was prepared today to come in. This person was prepared to shoot people. His intent was to cause harm. And as I stated before, the investigative part of this is going to be thorough and it's going to take some time. As you can see behind us, we opened up Bestgate Road. We thought that we may need to secure that roadway for a long period of time. And as we get further into the investigation, we realize that we don't need that roadway. But the building, 888 Bestgate, will be secured for some time. I do not have a time frame on that yet. We're going to be inside there for quite a bit, and until this investigation is complete. When I have more confirmed information, I will share that confirmed information with you.
You said he targeted specifically this newspaper. Exactly what was his beef with this newspaper?
That's what we're investigating now.
But there are already reports that he had a history with the newspaper a couple of years ago.
That's what I'm hearing. But before we confirm that, I need our investigators to go and look into that and make sure that's correct.
Chief, does he live in Annapolis? Difficulty initially identifying the man, that you went through a process of perhaps facial recognition to get an identification. Is that why you're able now to go to the home and search quickly?
No, I can't share that with you. It's the first time I've heard facial recognition.
Is he being cooperative? Is he answering questions?
I can't answer that. He is at our criminal investigation division. Our detectives are down there with him. I have not interrupted them to ask him if he's being cooperative.
When do you think we're going to get any more information on the suspect?
You will have the information as soon as we confirm it.
Is this somebody that's known to you, Chief? Is it, you have a history with
Can
him?
you confirm if this suspect did have a connection to the Capitol Gazette? Can you tell us that?
The only connection I can tell you about right now is possibly through social media. I have no other confirmation.
Any of your department had any issues with this guy in the past, or other departments?
We are still looking into that. I cannot confirm whether or not our department has come in contact with him. We will have that at a later time as well.
Have you received any comment from any family members?
Is he a resident of Maryland? Can you at least tell us, is he a resident of Maryland or he came from outside?
No, he's a resident of Maryland.
Did he know who he was looking for? You said he was walking through looking for.
That's going to be part of the investigation. I can't confirm for you whether or not he actually knew employees there or if he just targeted the business in general.
Chief, can you confirm his identity?
Can you tell us where in Maryland he's a resident?
No.
When are you going to be able to confirm his identity, Chief? 'Cause a lot of
Very
us don't
soon.
have the
Chief,
names.
can you provide
Very
any
soon.
information on the type of shotgun? Was it a sporting shotgun? Was it a tactical shotgun? And can you provide any information about these smoke grenades, if they were commercially available or military?
I don't have that information. I will find out.
So were all the people shot in the newspaper office?
I can't confirm that. They were shot on the first floor.
Deputy Chief, there's some talk about the gunman trying to hide his identity in certain ways, maybe with his fingerprints burned off or things. Can you confirm any of that?
I cannot. It's the first I heard facial recognition and the first that I've heard anything about fingerprints. We have no verification on either.
Sir, can you confirm he has a criminal?
Against him, were any threats either on social media or directly sent to that building? Do you know?
We know that there were threats sent to the Gazette through social media.
You have a
By this person?
Recently by this person?
He's in his late 30s.
By this person? Those threats were sent by this person?
No, the threats were sent over social media. We're trying to confirm what account that was, and we're trying to confirm who actually sent them.
When were the threats sent?
Can you tell us anything about the broken windows on the fourth floor?
I'm sorry, hold on one second.
How long ago were those threats?
How long ago were those threats? To my knowledge, those threats were as early as today.
Can you tell us anything about the broken windows on the fourth floor?
I can't answer that. The broken windows on the fourth floor, as I mentioned to you guys once before, we have a two-phase approach, right? One's tactical, one's investigative. Those broken windows on the fourth floor, probably, and I will confirm this, but I'm almost positive they came from our tactical guys.
Deputy Chief, are all the 5 fatalities employees of the Gazette? Are all 5 fatalities employees of the Capitol?
I can't confirm that.
Have you had a chance to see the surveillance video yet?
We have not. In fact, that's a great question. In fact, we're pulling all those as we speak. We have property managers here. We have everybody that's associated with that building. Here's the interesting part. Governor Hogan and Mr. Hsu, our county executive, has mentioned this numerous times. And if you see this gentleman behind me from the Red Cross, we have had so much support from around this state, not only law enforcement, but both private and public sector. And this gentleman's one of them from the Red Cross that have come and just asked what they can do. And that's important for us. We have to take care of a lot of people in a scene like this, not only police officers, but our victims' families, and then we have to get everybody back to normal, right? That's our job. So that's why we have these people here.
Chief, can you tell us anything about how he was apprehended, and did he say anything to those responders to the
I can't. That's part of the investigation, and when I'm able to give that information to you, I will.
Did they ever have any security in place given the fact they got threats?
Chief, how about his age?
Late 30s.
Was there any security in the building given the fact they were dealing with threats?
We don't know that yet. That's part of the investigation. We're looking into that as well. Based on the threats, not to my knowledge, no.
Chief, what about his fingerprint?
Did the Capitol Gazette call your department to ask for any kind of protection or in any kind of response to a threat?
If they have, I am not aware of that personally, but we will look into that because of those threats, and we'll get back to you on that information.
Chief, were you able to take his fingerprints?
Say that again?
Were you able to take his fingerprints?
Were we able to take his fingerprints? That'll be part of the whole booking process. Yes, eventually his fingerprints will be taken. I'm sorry?
There are reports of that with his fingerprints.
Yeah, I'm going to be really clear about this, guys. We have no information about facial recognition or anything about his fingerprints. If I had that information, I would give it to you, but we don't have that.
Chief, as you're trying to verify the social media accounts, can you talk about the specificity of the threats? Can you talk about the threats? What kind of threats were made against the Capitol?
What I can share with you now is they were general threats towards the Capitol. The Capitol is a media outlet.
But I mean, was it saying I want to kill somebody? Was there harm they were threatening? Or was it just saying I'm never going to buy your paper again? Give us an idea of the level of threat.
It's a good question. So when I have that information available to you, I will be more specific on the threats.
Can you say that they were violent threats?
The threats were about a specific story?
No.
Can you say that they were violent threats?
They indicated violence.
Directed at anyone in specific at the paper?
Politically motivated threats?
I can't answer that.
Was he targeting anyone specifically?
We do not have any We have no knowledge at all that he was targeting anyone specific at the Capitol. No.
Deputy Chief, has the Eden Capitol talked to you at any point recently about some concerns or threats? Have they personally contacted you? Did you guys have a conversation with that?
No. Look, I want to be clear about another point. The Capitol newspaper is our local newspaper. We interact with the Capitol newspaper daily. Lieutenant Frazier is our public information officer. We have friends at the Capitol newspaper. We speak with these men and women on a daily basis to get stories out that are important to the citizens of this county. So we're here, we're invested, we're going to get this investigation right, and we're going to come back and we're going to give you credible, confirmed information to answer all your questions.
You're going to have a name on the suspect?
Soon.
Was there a boosted
One more.
police presence after the threats were issued? Can you say whether
Say that again?
Was there a boosted police presence of any kind after the threats were issued?
No.
I'm just curious.
Last one.
Can you tell us anything about the injuries? Have they been released? We've heard now that they're minor. Are they minor injuries?
I can't answer that. We have 2 individuals at Anne Arundel, and then we have 1 at shock trauma. All right, one more, that's it.
Indication that he had any tactical training of any kind?
No, we do not know that yet.
Do you know what time? Release the name tonight?
In the morning. So in morning time is when our next briefing. Yeah. So just to update you guys with the next briefing. So we don't anticipate having any further information until tomorrow morning with releasing the suspect's name. As you know, there's a lot of investigation that's going on right now. So we don't want to jeopardize any of that. Again, we just from the Anne Arundel County Police Department, like the chief said, we interact with these reporters every day, like we do a lot of you guys that are local reporters. So I think sometimes in these major events that gets lost. So our thoughts and prayers go out to these victims, to the victim's family, and to friends. So these are people that we knew, personally.
So if you're just joining us, we've just heard the latest information from authorities. There were social media threats made. That's the only kind of threats that they are aware of or confirming at this point. Some of those social media threats, or at least one of them, was made as early as earlier today. The person who is accused of this, they say, is in their late 30s. They have not given out a name. They say this was a targeted attack on the Capitol Gazette, that this person looked for his victims, 5 fatalities, 2 superficial injuries from broken glass or trying to escape from the shooter. They are in the process of getting search warrants. They have secured this person's house. They haven't entered the house. They're getting search warrants before they do that. This person also, in addition to a shotgun, had smoke grenades, which they used, all of which show a level of preparation, according to law enforcement. In a moment, we're going to have my complete interview with 2 reporters who were there when all of this happened, who hid under their desks. Their accounts are chilling. We go into a lot of detail with them, so we're going to bring you that interview in just a moment. But I want to bring in our law enforcement analyst, and our former FBI Supervisory Special Agent Josh Campbell is with us, CNN legal and national security analyst and former FBI Special Agent Asha Rangappa, and CNN law enforcement analyst and retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent James Galliano. Josh, so police are saying a targeted attack. I'm wondering at this stage, and again, this is very early hours, what stands out to you based on what we just learned?
So that statement in and of itself was the main takeaway here for me. We've been reporting on this for a number of hours, and obviously the question of these incidents always starts with, why did this person do this? What was the motive? Was there a connection, or was this random? That was the question that we've been looking to answer. Was this targeted? As my colleagues Evan Perez and Shimon Prokupecz have been reporting, along with talking to some of our sources, that there was this connection. And as we've learned, and it was confirmed there at the press conference, that police are now on the verge of entering a residence. Will they're continuing to gather information, and no doubt we'll get more, but that at least answers that question. The one remaining factor for me is obviously we look at some of the evidence that we've heard, these devices, and obviously the individual was there, walking on the first floor and seeking to take life. It'll be interesting to see whether or not the conclusion that this was targeted was based on that evidence alone, or whether the subject is indeed cooperating with authorities. We've been talking to our sources, and the last several hours we've learned that at one point he wasn't cooperative, but that can change at any time when law enforcement is if they're able to finally convince him that it's in his best interest to talk. So a lot of unanswered questions. The last thing, Anderson, is we have this this issue of social media, which that's something that law enforcement officers will look at anyway in a situation, trying to determine what are the mediums that someone uses to communicate. The fact that that medium may also have been used as a threat will be particularly of interest to law enforcement officials as this very long-term investigation continues.
Yeah, James, the shooter was not carrying ID, according to sources, and as Josh was just talking about, based on sources, that he reportedly wasn't cooperative. There was also this report that he had somehow altered his fingerprints, though the police officer, the chief of police there would not confirm that. For you, what does all of this say about the level of preparation, the smoke canisters as well?
First of all, in crisis incidents, inaccurate information is always a problem that we have to sift through. So the chief was very clear there. He says, we're going to be very careful. Anything we put out is going to be very accurate. We want to make sure that we don't put anything else erroneous. We'd heard some reports that maybe some fingerprints have been altered and things like that.
Early reports also said potential IEDs, improvised explosive device. He's corrected that, saying no, what it was smoke canisters.
Exactly, and I think sometimes for civilians, they look at a smoke canister and they might think that it's an IED. Well, it's a pyrotechnic. It could be used for that. I mean, it causes fire and obviously smoke. What those things are used for, from a military perspective, you use those to signal and you use those to obscure. Right. Now, using him in this kind of situation, did he use that as a distraction? Did he use that as something that was going to cause fear and panic? That's quite possible. But the other thing that struck me was his selection of a weapon. It was a shotgun. Now, the chief didn't drill down and say whether or not he had used it loaded with buckshot or he had loaded with birdshot or a slug, because a slug round is a dangerous round. They're much less accurate because it's a scattergun type device, and obviously a lot of people have shotguns for home defense, so it probably didn't raise any suspicions that he had purchased this or had this weapon available, but not the kind of weapon we've seen, generally speaking, in these type of incidents.
Asha, I mean, again, it is very early in this investigation. The motive, which is obviously very important in every situation, but in this as well, not yet determined. We don't know why this newsroom was perhaps targeted, even if the shooter knew any of the actual victims or editors at the paper. The two people who lived through this, who I'm going to talk to, reporters, very distinctly described the path that this gunman took through the newsroom and where people were and who it was that he seemed to, in their opinion, be looking for. But again, we don't know yet motive. Some threats were made over social media. At this point, what do investigators, what do they do to try to determine motive? Obviously, there's the interview process. Whether or not he's been cooperative, that's unknown at this point.
Right. Well, obviously speaking directly with the shooter, he's still alive. He's going to be able to give them the best information. I think they're going to want to confirm, this is what it sounds like, but they're going to want to know, was he doing this alone? Or was this in coordination with anybody, or did anybody know about this? And a lot of clues about motive might come from the people around him, friends and family. If he was doing this alone, lone wolf shooters are very difficult to identify and prevent ahead of time because usually the people who are seeing signs of it are the people who are closest to this person. And just to relate this back to kind of a bigger conversation that we've had this week about civility and rhetoric, lone wolf actors are often alienated individuals who are looking to displace their anger and frustration onto some kind of outside entity or enemy. And I think it's worth pointing out that we've had a constant rhetoric coming even from the president that the press is the enemy of the people. That's been repeated constantly. And I think it's worth noting that if there is a link here that the publication was being targeted, that kind of rhetoric can be very dangerous in these times.
And again, we don't know the history, if this person does have some sort of history with this newspaper, how far back it goes. One of the police chief there was talking about perhaps even years, but there was a social media threat made today. Joining me right now is Lieutenant Ryan Frazier. Lieutenant, I appreciate you being with us. At this stage, can you say whether or not that the shooter is cooperating with authorities?
At this point, we're not saying whether he is cooperative or not, but we do have him down at our CID building, our Criminal Investigation Division. He's being interviewed by our detectives, and they're trying to find out as much information as possible. So it's still very early on in the investigation. As you know, unfortunately, since we've seen these tragic incidents happen across the nation, this is the investigative part. which takes a very, very long time. So it's something that our investigators, we have several investigators assigned to this, and you know, they're interviewing him, interviewing witnesses. We had approximately 170 people inside that building that we were able to get out safely that are all essential witnesses. So our detectives are interviewing all those people as well, collecting video surveillance from the building, from surrounding buildings. So right now we still have a lot of legwork to do. It's just the tip of the iceberg. But you know, we're up to the task, and we're going to make sure that we get, you know, justice for these people that have lost their lives. Certainly our thoughts and our prayers go out to these individuals. You know, it's interesting from a PIO standpoint, because this is our local newspaper. These are people that I had personal close relationships with. Many of the people in our department have. I deal with them on a regular basis. So it hits very close to home when it's people that you know.
Right.
So it's very unfortunate. And again, our thoughts and prayers go out to them.
Yeah, PIO is Public Information Officer for our viewers. You talk about that a search warrant, that you're getting a search warrant right now in order to be able to enter the property. How long a process is that to get a search warrant?
Yeah, well, it kind of depends on the case. So, you know, at this point, we don't have, we're in the process of that. So that's one of the many things that our detectives will continue to do throughout the night into tomorrow, is once we're able to identify locations that we believe we have probable cause to go in and get search warrants for, those will be served. So
but
it kind of depends on a case-by-case basis.
You've secured the area around this person's house, is that right? A house or apartment, I assume.
That I can't confirm, so I don't have that information, but it certainly is part of the process. I don't know if we're there at this moment, but again, certainly part of the process. That's one of the steps, one of the procedures when we obtain a search warrant for an individual's address.
I talked to two of the reporters who lived through this, who were describing this was all happening on the first floor. This office was on the ground floor. How easy was it to enter the building, and how close was the newsroom to the entrance of the building?
Yeah, so when you enter the building, the newsroom is on the first floor. It's very easy, very accessible building, because when you walk into the building, there's several other businesses and places of employment there. There's doctors' offices and other businesses. So to get in there, it's very easy, open access. So it would have been very easy for him to get inside the building. You know, to what extent he knew about the building, we're not sure. We do know at this point that this appears to be a targeted event. It's pretty clear from the evidence that's left behind and with the damage that was done that he went into that building to kill people. There's no doubt in our mind with that. So, so he went in there with a purpose, and luckily he was engaged very, very quickly by our officers. I believe we were there within a minute and quickly engaged the individual and certainly protected a lot of other people in there. Who's to say how many more lives could have been lost? So
yeah, I mean,
certainly
a minute
we're very proud of our officers that got there.
Yeah, I mean, a minute is an extraordinary response time. Oftentimes it takes, you know, 5 minutes for police to arrive on a scene like this. So that's an extraordinary response time. Just you talk about this as being a targeted attack, and that he went there to kill individuals. To your knowledge, was he targeting individuals? Did he know specific people that he was wanting to do harm to, or was it not so directed, just targeted against the paper in general? Do you know at this stage?
Yeah, I understand. That's a great question. To my knowledge, I don't have specifics of any individual or reporter that he had targeted. It is my understanding that he had some type of conflict with the paper in general. So we don't have any information at this point that he was targeting one individual reporter or anything like that. It just seems like he was upset with the paper as a whole.
And I know this was asked at the press conference. Can you just confirm if the shooter said something, yelled something when he was being taken into custody, and if so, what that was?
Yeah, to my knowledge, I don't know of anything that he has said. So I know detectives are continuing to try to get information from him. There's been a lot of information on social media. You know, social media can be a good thing or a bad thing. So in this point, it seems like a lot of information, a lot of rumors are spreading to where, as he obliterated his fingers for fingerprints and stuff, that's simply not true. That stuff is kind of, I guess, spun out of control. So, but yeah, you know, we have him in custody. We're talking to him. We're doing everything that we can to try to find out, you know, a motive. How long this was planned. So there's a lot of questions that we still need answers to, and you know, we're going to stay at it all night into tomorrow. We anticipate a briefing tomorrow morning with the suspect's name and some further information, so we know it's important to get it out to the public. But again, you know, this is a community down here in Annapolis. We're all very tight. These were, you know, our local paper, so yeah. It's we had a lot of good relationships with them. So our hearts and prayers certainly go out to the victims and the victims' friends and family.
I'm going to let you go, but I just you had said that it's not true about the fingerprints, and the chief had said that that was the first he was hearing about it. He hadn't said that it was absolutely not true. So just for clarification's sake, you're saying there was no attempt or something to do with fingerprints, altering of any kind of fingerprints?
Not to my knowledge. No, we saw that on social media and spoke to detectives down at our criminal investigation division, and that they had no idea where that information came from. That's not true.
All right, good clarification, Lieutenant Frazier. I appreciate it, and I know you have a busy night ahead of you. Thanks for all your efforts.